This is Coder Radio, Episode 8 for July 30th, 2012. Hi everyone, you're listening to Coder Radio, Jupiter Broadcasting's 8-week-old podcast all about the art and business of software development and related technologies. My name is Chris, and joining us every single week is our host, Michael Dominic. Hey there, Michael.
Hey there, Chris. How are you?
I'm pretty good, still waking up a little bit, but other than that, I'm okay.
Fair enough.
How are you doing?
I'm good. I had another late night.
Oh, you did? I was going to say.
Yeah, I actually had to call one of your sponsors at GoDaddy because of a poorly managed on my part shared hosting plan.
Did they get you taken care of?
They did.
Well, that's good. That's good. So were you having some traffic problems?
Well, I wrote an article on my blog about some of the issues I've been having with certain app stores.
Dun, dun, dun.
And I needed to do something important on the same hosting plan last night, and apparently that article was very popular.
Yeah, I
and
see
it
that.
knocked out the whole plan.
Oh, you got a lot of traffic, huh?
I don't even have the numbers, to be honest with you. I didn't even check. I was on the phone. It took the guy 45 minutes to get everything back and running.
Wow. Well, I'm glad you at least got it taken care of. Of course, that is always that's always the downside to writing something that gets pretty popular online. Imagine how it goes when you have a podcast episode. Say an interview with Richard Stallman that kind of goes viral. The amount of bandwidth and money you have to throw at something like that is crazy. Because when you're doing video files, it's nothing, because it's like nothing else, because it's these long contiguous downloads that are just these constant connections. Pretty crazy.
Yeah, that must have been terrible for you guys.
Now, so I see here in the show notes that we might be dashing a few dreams in this episode. What's going on?
Well, we have a bunch of CS majors listening, and I've decided to destroy all their hope. Mainly because I'm tired and grumpy.
If I have learned anything, now you have to remember I live near a pretty big casino in Washington State, and if I've learned anything from that experience is that everyone thinks they're the one that's going to win. They're going to beat the odds.
Yeah, everybody's what is it, Seabiscuit? Everybody's the long shot, right? Everybody's
exactly.
Rocky.
Yeah. Of course, look at you. You just put an app in the App Store, right? So.
No, I did not put it in the App Store.
Oh, really?
Yes. No.
Okay.
It was submitted to the App Store, but never released. I have a pending developer release as it stands.
Oh, okay.
So we're going to talk about that more in terms of dependencies and certain technical issues, but...
Well, should we do the feedback first?
We should do the feedback.
All right.
Yeah.
What's our first feedback?
Well, our buddy Emmett solved this problem. I don't remember how because I lost the email, but he had some kind of MSI he was using.
Okay.
Yeah, and then somebody else actually wrote in with a similar solution to his problem.
Yeah.
So Chris, if we could find that, just post it somewhere.
Okay. Put up on Pastebin or something.
Yeah, I feel like it's been an ongoing story, so we may as well cover the.
Yeah. These were the guys who are trying to figure out how to do some tricky deployments of their workstations and stuff.
Yeah, so I'm very happy your problem solved. I'm sorry I couldn't be more helpful. Windows is not really my area. Moving right along, Charles wrote in to, first of all, tell me something amazing. C was at one time called a portable assembler. So, low level. He also wrote in to tell me some of the nitty-gritty differences between LLVM and GCC.
Finally.
Yes. So I'm not going to bore everybody with that because it was very interesting to me, but I don't think it'll be interesting to really anyone else.
Oh, they may never know. Now you're going to be.
You may never know, but it's something you could very easily look up.
Oh, that's true.
Basically, LLVM, the VM part, stands for virtual machine. So it's, in a weird way, it's a little different, but ultimately the same.
Huh.
So it's way too complicated to cover thoroughly in a quick feedback section without saying something that is wrong and people jump down my throat.
Right. You want to do a little brainstorming first before you cover it.
Yeah, if we were to cover it, and maybe I'll do it next week, it would have to be its own segment because it's just LLVM's actually pretty cool, but fairly complicated.
Okay. Interesting.
So let's just move. But remember, C is called portable assembler, so ha ha ha. Makes me very happy.
Like you even put a ha in the show notes with all caps exclamation mark.
That's right. So Nicholas sent me an email, and the content was just that he liked the show. But the important part about the email was that it was written in C.
Another written in C email. Very nice. I tell people ask me, so how's Coda Radio doing? And I say, and the people that are, that get audience and all that kind of stuff, I say, well, people are sending us emails written in C. No. Yeah.
Yeah, they are. Yeah. C and C++ almost predominantly.
It's awesome. It's just so cool.
Yes, and Grey Wolf is Charles. He's saying that he said it sometimes was called Portable Assembler. That's correct, but Grey Wolf, come on, it makes me more right if I say it's always called Portable Assembler. It's called spin.
I've always found exaggeration is a good policy.
I'm just trying to troll. Yeah, I'm just trying to troll people. No, but the point is that it was a high level, low level debate, right?
Hey, we got to keep all this email volume up somehow, right?
Yeah, and I can't rip on KDE every week. I mean, I guess I could, but it just seems wrong.
You might run out of material.
And especially that Gnome is in trouble.
Yeah.
Got to change sides. Moving right along, James wrote in asking me if I've ever used the Intel River Trail API. That's a mouthful.
Yeah.
So I haven't. It looks very interesting if anybody's interested in it. It's kind of like a hardcore. Again, it's one of these Intel tools, right? So it's definitely made for the hardcore. You would be using it for a specific reason. And since I haven't used it, I can't tell you what that reason would be. And I didn't have time to investigate it thoroughly. But his second question was, is there a Coda Radio subreddit? So the answer is no. Chris, will there be?
Well, kind of, I've wondered about if I should do subreddits for all the shows or just the shows that are very news focused. That's how we have it right now. Is like the shows that cover weekly headlines as a big part of the show, I tend to have subreddits for.
Sure.
So the last subreddit has really flourished. The TechSnap subreddit does really well too, but it's not as active. And the Unfilter subreddit, I mean, each show is also younger and younger as the list goes. But so it kind of seems to be some shows subreddits are really, really good for, and some shows maybe not. It seems like to me, email is a better mechanism for this show.
Yeah, I think email for this because there is, we've gotten a few of these subreddit emails. And there seems to be a pretty big split between whether the show should be more high-level concepts and the business side, in addition to technical stuff, or just straight, put code on the screen and talk about it line by line.
Yeah.
So I think right now we should just keep hedging the bet, and we'll kind of see how it evolves.
Yeah, I'm always open to doing it.
Yeah.
Especially if demand keeps up, or like if we're, if we get to a point where we have ideas that we want people to be able to vote on or submit.
Yeah, that would be an interesting use of it.
Yeah. But see, one of the things always is you only get a small group of people that actually vote. So sometimes things only get like on a semi-active subreddit 4 or 5 votes.
Well, that's the problem, right? It's really hard to tell what the real majority thinks because the people writing in, I'm assuming, I hope this is true, that there's a lot more users than there is actually feedback.
Yeah, usually, it's a almost 1 to 0% ratio.
Yeah,
it's usually a really small percent because so many people listen more passively as they're driving or working, and they really can't engage so much. But I don't know. It seems pretty active, really. I mean, you get quite a bit of email.
We got a lot, yeah. And there's actually some I got this morning that I didn't have time to put in.
Yeah,
so I have to do it next week.
There's email that comes in constantly. It's like even as the show's going on the air, we're still getting email.
But this is also kind of part and parcel to the why there's never any code hosted in the video. Because you can correct me, Chris. I think a large percentage are listening to the audio cast.
Yeah. I mean, we have, it's kind of a split, but yeah, it's. I would assume that also people are listening to the video feed when we're not displaying anything. Probably have the tab, on another tab or minimized or something.
Right. So we'd have to figure out a way to do that. So, in the meantime, people were just kind of holding steady.
We could always do like a paste bin thing, and then we could also display that in the video version of the show, and then people listening could always go to the show notes and look at the paste bin link if they were interested. But it does seem like it'd be hard not to make that really dry.
Yeah, it would be hard. I mean, we can discuss it more, and if anybody has any ideas, that would be great. But my concern is that it would please the, say, 5% who really want it, and the other 95% would be bored.
Now, like concepts and principles and all that kind of stuff definitely lends itself to audio and discussion,
And that's why I've tried to focus on concepts that aren't like, this is how you do X in PHP.
Well, and we've had other discussions that off air that are ideas for those kinds of things that could be separate from the show but still part of the show. And that might be the way to do that kind of stuff as just like a separate release.
And Grey Wolf in the chat mentioned we could use GitHub GIS. We could. If you don't know what a gist is, it's a code snippet.
Oh, yeah.
And I know a great app for managing your code snippets.
Okay. That might be handy. I wonder who might make that app.
I don't know who might have released that, but should we carry on?
Yeah.
All right. This email, I honestly, is probably the most important one we got, except for the one at C, because it's in C.
Right.
Brandon wrote in asking me about working on services like Odesk, Elance, and vWorker. He's trying to do it for some side money. He noted in his email that the rates seemed very, very low for software developers. That's because they are. If you're...
Odesk, huh?
Yeah. These are basically outsourcing services.
Yeah, okay.
I've had clients who use them. Sometimes it goes very poorly. Sometimes it's okay. I think it's like with any other contracting deal. You could get a bad contractor or a good contractor. I've never done work on one of these services because the rates are just, not sustainable.
So I see. So I go in here and I say, I'm looking for work, and I say I can do scripts and utilities. Amazon Kindle Scraper.
Yeah, but the rates are like, $5 an hour, $10 an hour. They're very low.
Yeah. Less than 10 hours a week, 30 plus hours a week for 6 months. YouTube comment rater hourly. Are you kidding me? Look at this.
This is not like, this, if you're looking for side development work.
So this is kind of like Amazon's Turk system, only different in a way for this site, because Amazon does something like this too. Here's these guys will pay $25 for a simple PHP script.
Yeah.
That's it. That's kind of interesting.
Interesting.
Maybe not a bad way to hone your skills and make a little money. A little money?
Very little. It depends on where you are. Brandon, I believe, was from either the U.S. or Western Europe. Mm-hmm. So the rates are very not what he would get where I'm assuming he's from, which I think he's actually from the U.S. according to Google+. It's something to think about, but, really, if you're looking for a good place to find software development work, unless you're actually in one of these areas where that's a normal rate, which I don't actually think it is, you're going to want to really work on that network of either, former employers, colleagues, friends, and just get work the old-fashioned way.
Yeah. Craigslist.
Yeah. Just, I got to watch that.
Yeah. Okay. So I hadn't really ever looked for any services like that. I makes sense those exist, but yeah, the rates did not look so good.
Yeah, and if you're hiring, there is the old adage: you get what you pay for. If you're working with someone who's in a totally different time zone, it's very hard to communicate with them because you'd have to stay up all night to actually get them on the phone. It might not be worth it, right? And it's very hard to check references. Things like that. It's something these tools I think are used mainly when people need a quick development job and don't have a real budget.
It seems like guys like me that have very little money but need like a quick script for something for my production line or something.
Yeah, I'd even say though, guys like that would be better off.
Well, I just asked somebody in the community. Well, I'd ask somebody in the community because I have an awesome audience, but I can understand how some people get stuck.
Yeah, I don't. When I say I don't use these services, it's not that I don't use less expensive developers to help me with things. I hire students.
Yeah, that's a great way to go.
Because I prefer to hire a local student.
Yeah.
And work with someone like that rather than, to me, there's this big middleman issue here too. You don't know who vWork, the guy you hired through vWorker really is.
How practical is doing that? Is hiring a student? Because that seems like not only you're helping out a kid, but potentially you're making an investment in somebody who's going to further their skills and then will keep working with you on future projects. So that really would be like the great way to go. But
yeah, it's very practical.
How do you do that?
Well, I just emailed my old university.
Okay.
And hired out of there.
That's a great idea. Yeah.
After I graduated, they did add something of a computer science program, but it's not really computer science.
So you just email your professor and say, hey, do you recommend?
Yeah, I asked them, can you put me in touch with someone from the new department?
Cool. That's a great idea.
Now, one of the things you have to do, though, is, not all interns are created equal, right? You're probably going to have a pretty good turnover rate. Like one thing students won't know, even in a CS degree, I found, is how to use basic source control, which the first time I dealt with it, I found somewhat appalling.
Yeah, I can see that.
And was a little upset. And then I had a discussion with the student's professor. That university doesn't teach, they consider computer science a true science. They don't teach practical development skills. And it's kind of a university by university thing. So, it's hit or miss, but I find that it's a better way to go. And once you find someone good, it's really rewarding to work with, a student like that who's local.
Yeah, absolutely. This next topic really got some traction in last week's episode. I was really impressed with this.
Yeah. So Thomas and a number of others, including Linda on Google Plus,
and we got some emails, and I also got people submitting me apps to the Linux Action Show email address recommending Android apps to do it. So it really took traction.
That's fantastic. Yeah, the Pomodoro coding technique. A lot of people are trying it with me.
And how is it going?
I had a few people tell me that they tried it. They just, they couldn't stop when the bell rang or when their phone went off.
They were in their zone?
They were in the zone and they just, muted the alarm.
Yeah.
I had a number of people actually tell me they felt less tired at the end of the day.
I could totally see that.
I tried it with mixed results because, I lacked a little discipline for a few days, but, so far so good.
When you say so good, you mean like you're actually sticking to it and you're going to keep doing it?
I'm going to keep trying.
Now, what about the zone breakage?
In terms of what?
Well, is that not an issue? Like,
context switching?
Aren't you what if you're just totally, it's just flying, it's just flying through to your brain to your fingers, it's got a direct connection. Do you stop that, interrupt that, and walk away?
So the thing I found is that my task can't be, implement this entire data model. They have to be subtasks.
Oh, that's right.
So they have to be broken down into, 30-minute, 25-minute actionable chunks.
Which actually forces you to make a more manageable workload.
Yeah, which makes your code more modular.
I wonder if I could apply this technique to show research, because, I can spend hours researching for shows, and it really, after a while, my body starts to hurt because I haven't moved for so long. I should try this. You
should try. I mean, it's tough to do.
So just as I break my work chunks into 25 minutes?
You break it into 25 minutes with a 5-minute break.
And what do you do during that 5-minute break?
Go to the bathroom, get coffee, answer email.
Okay. Oh, okay. So it's not like you have to get up and stretch or something like that. It's just you have to just change tasks. You
should stretch, but the idea is that during the 25 minutes, you're supposed to turn your phone to silent, your email off. You're supposed to basically disconnect.
Okay, that's hard.
So it's a little tough, right?
Yeah, because I have kids.
Yeah.
Interesting though. Interesting. I might try it. I might try it on Wednesday when I'm putting together Unfiltered, because that is a long, straight marathon.
Fair enough.
There you go. All right. So that's the feedback. Now, of course, if people want to send in their thoughts to the show, the official way to get your feedback into the show is to email it, coderradio@jupiterbroadcasting.com, or you can just use that contact form at the top of the site and select Coder Radio. That sends it to the same exact place. And we will read them, and many of them will end up making some way or another into the show, either if it's through us just changing something in the show or actually Michael directly responding to it.
That's right.
All right, sir. Well, before we go into the technical dependencies discussion, which does sound rather interesting, I want to say thank you to the folks out there who have been signing up for Code School, one of our new affiliates that is a great fit with the show. And if you haven't tried it yet, go down to the bottom of jupiterbroadcasting.com where you will find all of our affiliate links, including a new Amazon DE, which has been heavily requested, Netflix US, and at the end of the list there is Code School. And we get a couple of these a week now. We're starting to get, I think we got 3 last week, 3 signups. And Code School is a way to learn by doing programming online. In fact, they give a free course on trying out Git. If you've heard a lot about Git, but you don't really know how it works or what it does, try out this free course to kind of get an idea of how Code School works. And then if you like it, just be sure you click on that link at the bottom of our website first and sign up. And then they send us a little thank you. And it's a great way to support the show while you get yourself something. Of course, you can use any of our affiliate links at the bottom of the site to support the show. And dun 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 dun, and this might even actually be worth a story sharing on the show in the future, is we have submitted both a Chrome affiliate extension and a Firefox to both the respective extension stores, which has been an interesting process. More so for Google. In fact, Google is reviewing it right now. I don't even know if it's going to be approved, but it's kind of been interesting to submit to these what used to be just extension repositories, which are now like these app stores that have processes and bank accounts you have to attach to do it. It's been an interesting experience, but pretty soon, hopefully, we'll have affiliate extensions in both official stores, which would be a great way for people to support us. So thanks, everybody, for doing that. All right, sir, should we talk about technical dependencies?
Yes,
what
the
is
devil that
a dependency?
Well, so there's lots of different kind of dependencies, and I'm going to go over 3 main types during this show. The one that people most often think of is what I would call technical dependencies. So at your most basic level, Chris, if you're writing something in Python, Python is a dependency. If you're targeting, GTK, that's a dependency. Mm-hmm. Unity is a dependency. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Any open source or proprietary projects you're using are dependencies. A good example of that might be, I liken a library called ASI for Mac and iOS development. That's a huge dependency. So, there is a school of thought that says you shouldn't have dependencies. And we talked about this, right? These are the people who, when you tell them about an open source tool or an open source library, they kind of puke on the floor.
Okay.
So, we need to keep in mind during this discussion that not all dependencies are evil. But if your entire project is just, a number of dependencies tight, are you okay?
Yeah,
you lost them. You lost them.
No, I'm here. What's wrong?
No, sorry. If your project is just a number of dependencies tied together, that's cause for concern.
I gotcha.
So let's use the Jupyter Broadcasting Community app.
Okay.
One of the big holdups is that it has a huge dependency called PhoneGap. Now, the trade-off we're making with PhoneGap is that it's allowing us to write mainly the same body of code, but run it on 2 very different platforms.
Right, which is extremely valuable.
But it comes at a big cost. Mm-hmm. So when you take a dependency like that, you have to do things the way the dependency wants you. And is that on my end or your end?
I don't know. Are you hearing something?
Yeah, I'm hearing something.
Oh, well, I don't think so. I don't hear anything.
Anyway, the other issue is that if something breaks in your dependencies, like a common case with PhoneGap, is that PhoneGap has developed rapidly. And you'll find on GitHub a lot of extensions that were written for, let's say, the previous 3 versions of PhoneGap that will no longer work with the current version. So the risk there is that you're going to have code that you didn't write that you cannot maintain. Or that's difficult to maintain.
Right, and you're kind of also in terms of the app, you're kind of hitched to PhoneGap's bandwagon, right?
Right. Now there are good dependencies, right? So let's say you're doing a Microsoft Windows app. .NET is a dependency that you probably should be taking. If you're doing a Mac app, Cocoa is something you should take. As I've learned the hard way, if you're doing a Unity Ubuntu app, Python and GDK are dependencies you probably should have taken.
Right.
Then again, there are bad dependencies. Yeah. Mono might be one.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I've linked in the notes Jeff Atwood's article called Avoiding Dependencies, which talks about how some developers actually within Microsoft, and I know they're a big software shop, so it's good to kind of keep in mind how they do things. The radical things they do to avoid dependencies on outside projects. Now, I would actually say, even though he lauds this as a good thing, that the example he talks about in here is bad. So he's saying the Excel team does everything in their power not to depend on external code, whether it's open source or proprietary. So, you
find the dependencies and eliminate them is their motto.
Yeah, they don't, and it's a very closed organization, so we don't really know. But if you read it, it sounds like they don't even want dependencies on their fellow Microsoft developers.
That's interesting.
So that's, in my opinion, that's a symptom of not invented here, where you won't use code that you didn't write.
Do you think it's just because they feel like if we're dependent on anybody else, they're just going to get in our way and slow us down and be a liability?
Possibly. It's also probably a lot of arrogance in some cases, right?
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's very interesting when you talk to, especially as a contractor, I come into companies and I put a bid on something and then I have to put a time estimate.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when the employees have to kind of evaluate your bid, they always come in at like half. But when then you ask them to do a web service or an API, everything takes several months, where they feel like your end should take a few weeks
Right.
and for half the price.
Uh-huh.
So I think there's a big tendency in the developer community to be more than a little arrogant when it comes to other people's work.
I get it, because people get burned and they just kind of get disgruntled about it, and they don't want to ever just run that risk again.
People get burned, but yeah, I mean, and there's all kinds of things at play, right? I mean, you as a sysadmin, you've known you come in as a contractor. Sometimes you came in because somebody screwed up.
It's interesting. He goes on to talk about the Excel team's ruggedly independent mentality meant that their code shipped on time, which I think is interesting because it kind of implying that if they were dependent on other people, they might not have shipped on time. Their code was uniformly high quality, and they had a compiler which back in the 80s generated P code that could therefore run unmodified on Macintosh 68,000 chips, as well as Intel PCs. The P code made the executable file about half the size that the Intel binaries would have been, which loaded faster from floppy disks and required less RAM. So see, this is what I'm talking about. They feel like they've been able to establish a history of delivering a better product by not depending on anybody else.
In a way, but if you keep reading, they also wrote their own compiler.
Right.
So they've, in a big organization with a virtually unlimited budget, and Excel is probably their biggest product or one of their biggest products in terms of revenue.
Yeah, the whole Office suite.
You can take that position. But in the real world, you're taking a dependency.
Oh yeah, it'd be crazy for normal size projects, that aren't the multi-billion-dollar industry.
Well, you usually don't have a choice. I mean, we talked about last week. Most developers are working on Java and C#. So the C# developers are all depending on .NET, which is a huge framework.
Well, I wonder if this is what's compelling Gnome OS. So one of the things that was just announced at this last week's Squadec, which is still in progress, is that in 2014 of March, I believe they said 2014, not 13, they want to ship, maybe I'm wrong, maybe it was 13, they want to ship Gnome OS because they don't want to be, quote-unquote, dependent on the middle layer distributions. Because they feel like their desktop being dependent on one of those distributions is holding it back.
I feel like GNOME is being held back by the OS distributions.
Yeah.
I don't agree with that. I like GNOME, but that seems unwise.
Is there something beeping in the background?
I don't know what that is.
It sounds like it's about to blow, man. I don't know. You might need to duck.
I might need a duck. If I die during this, just remember.
Is that coming from a computer?
I think it's coming from another room somewhere.
Okay. That sounds bad, man. Do you want to check on that?
Yeah, vamp. Do some vaudeville. I'll be right back.
Well, actually, while you do that, maybe I'll take a quick moment to. I didn't say anything during the affiliate read, but I probably should because it's kind of killing us, and it's been critical in terms of a drop-off in revenue for the network. If you are one of the people who do use our Chrome affiliate extension, please go check that it's enabled. If you go into Chrome settings and then extensions and scroll down, you'll find a Jupiter Broadcasting. It's got the big JB, Jupiter Affiliate Redirect, and it might just be grayed out. And if you just check the enable box, it turned back on. And the reason why that would be turned off is Chrome recently introduced a new version, because they do silent updates in the background, that actually disables any plugin that wasn't installed from the Chrome Web Store. That's actually why we're submitting our app to the web store to get around this issue, because it resulted in a huge drop-off in revenue. So I would like to implore everyone to go check that to help us out. So did you find it? Did you lock it down over there? No?
I did, and to the delight of the Apple haters, it was in fact an iHome.
An iHome? Is that like a little alarm clock iPhone docking thing?
It's a very old iPhone radio that hasn't had an alarm set in about 5 years.
And just all of a sudden randomly
it just went off.
That's awesome, dude.
So it's been unplugged.
It was like an alarm clock time bomb.
Yeah, it was. I was frightened, and I think we can just we can just cut that whole thing out probably.
Well, going back on track, so I think the GNOME project is interesting because one of the things that kind of caused their original rift with Canonical was that it was Canonical wanted them to implement notifications that weren't invented at GNOME, and GNOME had this "that's not invented here" mentality, and it's interesting to just kind of see how that has taken them.
Yeah, that whole Ubuntu GNOME, I remember that was a while back now. That whole notification thing, that just seemed like a really weird, pissing match for like.
Don't you think maybe that's what the Excel team is suffering from a little bit too, is the not invented here syndrome?
Well, I wouldn't say they're suffering. The Excel team, they're the rock stars of Microsoft in a lot of ways, right?
Okay.
In Office they're not suffering. They dictate what goes on. I mean, think about it. How much money do you think Microsoft invests in .NET? But the Office team can just say, we're not using it.
Right, or you're shipping a touch tablet. Yeah, we're
That's
not releasing a touch version of Office for that. Oh, your new desktop's based on this Metro UI. Yeah, we're not gonna do that.
We're not gonna do that. I mean, and this is we're broaching on some issues of power structure and how well, and I have something about this later in the show, but I hate the whole rockstar programmer thing. This is like people get if some. And we should just wait for that part of the show, but
okay. All right.
I think it's less not invented here with Excel and more. They have the revenue sheet to basically dictate what they want.
If you do if you follow some of the Microsoft blogs, like the mini Microsoft blog and ones like that, what you see is literally brand new projects that really need Office to be successful are completely just shut down. Like, for example, when earlier on they were talking about the Courier and actually doing a Courier tablet,
right.
I believe there was like some serious discussions around, well, this really is the perfect OneNote device. And the Office team looked at that and said, yeah, we just don't really have time to do that.
If you follow anybody who covers Microsoft, maybe Mary Jo Foley or anybody like that, they openly say there's constant fighting within Microsoft. There's little fiefdoms. Windows against Office are the big two, and then it's basically everybody else. And it's the everybody else section. They're actually trying to do things. They're the ones, the web team at Microsoft just open source all of ASP.NET, more MVC.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
They're trying to bring Microsoft forward into a more open source company. They're trying to get out of that extend extinguish mentality.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, they don't bring in the revenue, so they don't have the power. And it's a little off track, but it's good. Probably worth mentioning that Microsoft does stack ranking.
Right.
So if you have a team of 10, one person gets fired or removed from your team at the end of a project, no matter what. So it's like saying in school, if everybody got a 99 and one person got a 98, that person gets an F. So for all of our students out there. So they have some cultural issues that lead to this kind of thing. And I was more wanting to talk about that. They went to the weird extreme technical case of writing their own compiler for one program, which might have made sense in the 80s. Probably doesn't now.
Yeah, it does seem a little silly, especially since Microsoft makes those types of tools just as maybe they don't use that anymore, right? Maybe they use the Microsoft tool. They must.
They do not. Office is not written in .NET. It's written in C++.
Well,
it does not use this. It does not use WinRT. It uses the old low-level Windows APIs. From what I know from reading the blogs and listening to those kind of podcasts.
How ironic is it that Microsoft's biggest challenge with getting their software partners to utilize their newer technologies, and they're their own worst enemy in that regard?
And that's one of the things when people talk about Windows is a big problem is legacy. They're not just fighting with external developers and their partner. They're fighting amongst themselves. Because the cost to rewrite all this stuff would be astronomical. And, and this is all rumor and conjecture from what you hear on blogs and what you hear on podcasts. It's not unified. There's not one team and they're not holding hands. They're competing with each other. And those who have the revenue sheet have the power. So not Windows Phone, basically. That was cold. That was
I was like, wow, he's telling me. I like it though. I mean, it's an honest evaluation, I think. Sorry, well, of course, I'm not Microsoft's biggest promoter.
No, I mean, I think I'm a little more neutral than probably most people listening. But I would say that, I do feel like a desktop Office client is definitely a little archaic. So if that's what you're basing your business off of, you might want to change, right? Like,
Yeah. Well,
And
you
they're
know,
trying.
they're writing Microsoft for the web. Maybe that's their long-term plan to rewrite Office. They've got that kind of more fancy Google Docs, you know, the Office 360 or whatever it is that is online. So maybe that's their long-term goal there.
Maybe. And then we should get off because, you know, neither of us really has
Yeah.
a deep understanding of, you know, any kind of we don't work from we don't have a product.
I don't think
roadmap.
either one of us lay awake at night contemplating the future of Office.
Not Office, no.
No.
All Google Docs, yes.
Well, what is the next topic then?
All right, so distribution dependencies. Now, I did the subtitle, When a Store Wants to Be More. Now, this is a little less technical, but if you think about it, it's very technical.
Okay.
So, you know, obviously there was this gold rush for the Apple App Store, the Android Marketplace. People thought they were going to make millions of dollars.
Right.
You know, you could see a lot of articles saying that that's over. I would argue that it never existed. You know, the big success story would be Angry Birds. Angry Birds released, I think, 50 games before they had a hit. They were on the verge of bankruptcy. You know, there's no one-hit wonder.
Right, yeah.
So it's easy to turn this into an Apple bashing section, which I might do. I'll be honest with you. But
I don't think too many people will mind.
I don't think they'll mind, but
I'll see if I can play a devil's advocate where appropriate if I need to.
Well, I think I'm going to be the devil here because I've been working very heavily in Ubuntu this last week, and I'm reading more of the docs, more of the discussion. Yeah, you know, Ubuntu is your friend today. I don't think it's your friend tomorrow.
Tell me.
So they're allowing more than one software stack, which, you know, Apple doesn't do. Right. But if it's really hard to get some of the Ubuntu-y goodness, I know it's technically possible, but it's almost not worth the effort if you're not using their preferred implementation. Okay. So that's one step away in a lot of ways from saying you will write in Python and quickly.
Right, okay. I really don't see as big of an issue with that because that still makes that application, you know, it doesn't lock it to Ubuntu. Whereas, like, when you write something for the Apple's App Store, it only runs on a Mac. And it only will run on Macs that have the App Store. And that's not even all Macs. That's not even probably not all Macs by a large portion. I'm
not saying there's a one-to-one correlation today. I was saying if you look at the way Ubuntu is going with their interesting contributor agreements, I know that's kind of old news, but
they kind of channel you into a specific path.
Yeah, they're moving you in a certain way, which is really the broader point I want to talk about. How platform vendors, you know, they used to just provide the SDK and some docs and some maybe tutorials on how to do things and make a native experience on their platform. Mm-hmm. Now they're actually dictating what your app will and will not do. Again, the extreme example of this is Apple and sandboxing.
Yeah, that is pretty extreme, and to their expense. I mean, a lot of people have left the App Store, so it doesn't always work.
So I've released my app independently for now, and you know, it's a huge risk. I mean, say what you want about app stores, but they're basically free promotion.
Yeah.
I mean, if you know, the reason I'm doing it independently is because I like to add some features that don't play nice with sandboxing.
Like what? Can you say? You don't want to reveal?
Well, I was going to plug it anyway, so I could reveal a little now. The app ties in with Git and GitHub, and I would like to do some things where I read your Git repos with your permission, and you have to manually take an action to do it, and use that information to give you a good sense of what's going on compared to your...
So the app is called Code Journal.
Yes.
And it looks really cool. I like your codejournalapp.com page that you made for it. And $2.99, that's a crazy good price.
So that's a sale price until it's a limited time sale for the early release. And the reason for the sale price is I want to get enough people to buy it directly from me so that I don't have to release the App Store version.
Create public and private gist, just like we were mentioning earlier in the show. Perfect for little code snippets if we want to refer people, which will probably be very handy when we actually really get going on the app. Right. And I like this. You can keep an eye on all your favorite open source projects, keep in touch with your fellow coders on GitHub, notification center integration. Oh, look at you with the mountain lion features out of the box. Native sharing and more features to come.
That's right. Somebody's asking in the chat, this version is currently for OS X. The Ubuntu app I keep talking about is a Ubuntu version of this.
That's going to be a hit.
So one thing I did was I'm writing it from scratch in Ubuntu. Might not do that again. I could see why a lot of people, compromise experience to hit two platforms at once. Because now I've released the Mac app, and I'm almost sure that someone with more time than me is gonna Sherlock me on the Ubuntu one, right? Someone's gonna, if people buy this, someone's gonna kill me.
Maybe. I just put a link to it in the chat room too. I don't know, man. You see, there are a lot of apps that can do certain functions, but if you develop one that does has really good focus, good design, I think it can be a standout app.
Well, and that's the thing. We talked about design last episode, and Cheese Bacon. If you like the logo, if you like the graphics, that's all him.
Good job, Cheese Bacon.
I've really gone out of my way for each platform it's on. The code bases are 100% different. The layouts are different. It's meant to be native because it is native, right? So that app is pure Objective-C.
That's how you do it, and that's right. What the consumer I think still can tell.
Right, and so I'll be harassing Cheese Bacon again for some changes to the graphics I need in the Ubuntu app, but right now I'm having a hard time dealing with some of the Unity issues, and this is kind of off topic, but we should take a poll for me. How many people are actually running stock Unity?
Here, you know what? I will go to what here. You ask the question. So, what do you want the question to be? And I'll make a poll. Do you use Unity?
Do you run Unity without modifications?
Without what kind of modifications?
So, do you run it in 3D mode?
Oh, okay. So, do you run Unity, with Compiz without
turning off? Yeah. Without making it Unity 2D.
Yes, love it. No, thanks. So and that can be if they're using 2D or another desktop. They'll just say their answers are yes, I love it, or no, no thanks. That sounds good.
The question is you're either using the full stock implementation or you're not. Even if you're just using, the stripped down version, that's a no.
All right. Well, I just put the link in the chat room. So while Michael's talking about it, you can vote if you like, and we'll check it, and then we'll also put a link to the show notes. I have a feeling with this audience, it's going to be the majority is going to be no, but you never know. I'll put a link to it in the chat room too. So if people want to vote in the post show, maybe we can review the results next week. Because I think the download audience will be a higher user base.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in the audience and you have a Mac, go ahead. If you don't have a Mac, it's $3. Go buy it and give it to a friend who has a Mac. Hell, come on, help me out.
CodeJournalApp.com, and that is Michael's very slick looking. New brand fresh new GitHub client, and I think that is awesome and super timely.
Yeah, so I'm trying to really push forward on the Ubuntu one. I actually threw out the entire Mono implementation, which was painful. So the two platforms I'm looking at are straight Python.
Can I ask you like a behind the scenes question about your app?
Go ahead.
I don't recognize the payment system you're using.
Oh,
it looks really slick, though. I mean, it's like one of the most polished payment systems I think I've ever seen.
Yeah, you really like the part where you put your credit card in and click process.
I think I probably really like that part.
Yeah, I think you should try it. It's called Gumroad. So they specialize in, Cheese Bacon, I need a new logo.
This is so slick, Michael.
Yeah,
people should go buy it just so they can see this process.
I think they should buy it. You know what? Buy it twice. So you see the process twice.
Yeah.
If you buy it 10 times, there's an Easter egg.
Maybe. Easter egg development still pending.
Yeah. But so the payment system's called Gumroad. They're really good. They're a startup. They have, like PayPal, they take a percentage and they have a fee. But the pricing is reasonable. They make you look really good. They handle all the PCI compliance, which if anybody who's dealt with that knows that's...
that is nice.
That is not a place you want to be.
Yeah, you don't want to even have to worry about that. That means that they're doing all of the credit card protection stuff for you.
Exactly.
You don't have to worry about any of that.
And I actually had to speak with them directly. When you buy the app, you'll notice it asks you for your email. So you will get updates in real time, or virtually real time. When I upload a new version of the app, you get the update directly to your email. So there's no license keys. There's no issues there.
Nice.
To all you DRM haters, the app does not have DRM. Don't pirate it. I'll know.
They have here's our update on our poll, Michael. So we haven't had a ton of votes yet, but the votes are still coming in. We've had 19 votes. 53% use Unity with Compiz. 47% don't. So it's pretty neck and neck, really. Actually, now it's 50-50 split exactly. Now, here's what's cool, Michael, is people are voting live right now from Argentina. We've got live votes from Sweden. We've got live votes from the United Kingdom. Of course, live votes from Canada. Mostly from the east coast of Canada, including Quebec and Ontario, which is really cool. And then, of course, if we take a look at who's voting live in the United States right now, looks like it's a good mix of East and West Coast of folks.
East Coast. Interesting. I'm wondering how many. It's really interesting.
Wow, somebody in Russia just voted. How cool is that? Oh, and now we just got a vote from Germany, from Brandenburg.
Yeah, but it is around 50-50. That's, in all seriousness, that's kind of what I found in my very unscientific research.
Oh, there you go. So now we got 26 votes. Oh, and I'll put a link again. Oh, there we go. Slips and Dud just put a link in the chat room. So maybe we'll visit again at the end of the show. But yeah, it's pretty split. Now, I would encourage people who are listening to also go vote, because my suspicion is the download audience for some reason is running more Unity. I think so, but I think it's because people in the chat room right now are pretty hardcore.
Yeah.
Probably mostly Arch users in the chat room.
I don't think they're using Arch. They're using like Slackware. Arch is too easy.
Well,
but if you have a Mac, or a silver laptop in general, seriously, just go ahead.
So how was it juggling doing your own app, Code Journal, and also a client workload and things like that? Was that a difficult challenge?
It was very challenging, because I actually had to step in with a client who had a project they outsourced that went very poorly.
Oh.
Additionally, talking about distribution dependencies, so this is kind of why I am releasing it today without Apple.
Yeah.
So do you know that in Mountain Lion there's some wonderful APIs for Notification Center and iCloud?
I would imagine.
Do you know if you don't distribute your app through the App Store, they don't work?
Oh, I was wondering about that, but I thought I saw some apps that were doing notifications. But I don't know. I haven't really played with them.
You can do a limited version of the Notification Center API.
Oh, okay.
So it's local notifications only, so you can't do any kind of push notification.
Right. Okay.
There is zero iCloud access. Period. And there's also no Game Center access, I believe. So here's a catch-22 for me.
Okay.
I kind of wanted iCloud because, my whole thing about doing two separate versions of the app is I wanted the Mac app to be a true Mac Cocoa app.
As Mackie as possible.
Yeah, and I want the Ubuntu one, I'm considering even integrating it with Ubuntu One.
If there was something you could do, that would be really neat.
Yeah, so I want the features to almost be, this is what the Ubuntu's pushing, this is what Apple's pushing. And they would be very native to their respective platform.
And honestly, you're more likely to get featured in those app stores if you do those things.
Right. And so that's kind of what I was thinking. Then I got down to, all right, well, this is, the early release version. So some of the functionality is not there. All the basic functionality listed on the site does work, and it works fine. But some of the things we talked about reading Git repos and doing some more of the fancy, code analytics stuff for you, isn't in yet.
And you don't want to distribute from your site and from the store because you don't want to have two versions of the app?
Well, that's the thing. I can't do any of that from the store, and I don't want confusion because I have no way, if somebody tells me, I'm using the version from the store and I want to get into some of the more hardcore features, can you give me a license to the other one? I can't prove that they have a license to the first one. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm going to give a GIMP free trial...
It seems like another way to do it would be is if you had two different products, and one was like a more beginner version that was for the App Store and it had a different name.
Right, and there's issues and costs associated with having a product have a name, right?
Yeah.
You have to technically defend the name, and it's kind of a pain.
Yeah, and then it kind of splits your mind share about the app and all that.
And honestly, the sandboxing rules have become somewhat harsh. I mean, even big Apple fans like Marco Arment are coming out and burying them.
Yeah, he got quite a bit of traffic for his post about that too. It seems like both of you got quite a bit of traffic over talking about the app.
And he's much more positive on them than I ever am. In fact, in the past, thought of him as kind of an apologist because he's very, oh, well, if they're making the experience better, that's number one.
Well, and in some ways I could see it because it means it's going to make more people buy things, and that's what he's all about, is people buying more of Instapaper. But
Right.
he goes on to say that the App Store is heading towards a future of irrelevance.
I don't think that's true. So I think he's wrong. I think what's going to happen is that Mac desktop applications, and really this is something I'm concerned with, if Canonical does this same issue on Ubuntu, are going to become no more functionality than an iOS app. So the future, and if you actually read my article, I'm concerned about the future of big $100 applications.
Yeah, like Photoshop and stuff.
Photoshop, things that are so big that they require paid updates.
But maybe it's time for an adjustment. I mean, as an end user, I think all of these things have been grossly overpriced for far too long.
Well, Photoshop is overpriced, but an expensive app on the Mac App Store is $10.
Yeah,
and that's outrageously expensive.
Yeah.
So how low is low, right?
I don't know. Maybe that's not true. I bought like soundboard that was like $25 in the Mac App Store.
The only thing I saw that was really expensive that I ended up buying was that tool I featured, AppCode.
BB Edit is another example of something that's pretty expensive
That's a great example, but the version on the App Store does not have all the functionality of the real version.
Yeah, and
And he's had problems with users not knowing that.
Yeah.
And emailing him upset.
I would imagine.
Yeah. So there's the other issue of that, getting back to dependencies. That's a big dependency, right? If your distribution platform goes down, kind of like it did, a week ago, you're in trouble.
Yeah, but then it's where the markets are going. It's where the customers are at. It's where the money is. It's like my corollary to that is, my dirty secret is, don't hate me, YouTube people, but I honestly don't like posting their videos to YouTube all the time because they're not a great fit. YouTube is more of a short format video, and we're not kind of a good fit, but I know there's audience there.
And don't worry, Chris, I can fix that. I'm using a Mac right now. They hate me more. Don't worry.
Well, I love YouTube too because it's for discovery. It's the same exact thing. Like, you want to be in the App Store because it's awesome for discovery, for getting new eyeballs and things like that. But the better experience is back on our website where we have HTML5 players. Everything is encoded in really nice, high quality encodings. We have links to other relevant information. It's a better experience on the website. But I still go to YouTube because I know that's where people need to. That's where I need to be for people to find it.
Yeah, and that's kind of why I'm doing this experiment. My hope is that, like I say on the site, this is an early release. If I get enough traction on this, I'm going to just go whole hog and do those anti-sandboxing features. I'm going to put them back in, and I'll go without them. I'll go without the Apple App Store.
But won't you still question, even if you're semi-successful, won't you question how much more successful you could be? I mean, to be fair, wouldn't you need to try trial in the App Store too?
So it's the app stores are kind of funny, right? You can get thousands of people to download a free app, but you might get 10 to download a paid app. So even if I did a free version on the App Store that was just like a beta or a trial,
I say you put it $2.99. Put it up there for $3. See how it does. What's the worst that happens? Well,
the worst that happens is I have a bunch of customers that I don't know who they are and I can't support them.
Yeah, and then you're kind of stuck.
Because anybody could then say they bought it on the App Store, since
That's the broken system. That's a broken system, my friend. Yeah. I don't like that.
So
that's
this is why
that's a bad dependency.
It's a terrible dependency, right? Because they obfuscate your customers from you. Yeah, murdered that sentence.
No, but it's exactly what it is. Is they're the middleman, and they're a big middleman.
They're mean, and they.
Aw. Well, should we do our tool of the week?
I thought it was Code Journal. No, I'm kidding. Sure, we could do the tool of the week.
Well, besides Code Journal, because of course everyone's already got Code Journal now. I would assume. I mean, we covered it 10 minutes ago. I hope everybody's bought it.
I hope so.
I love this pick.
Sublime Text 2. And in all fairness, I mentioned it last week.
Yeah.
I feel a little weird how I've mentioned all these other editors, but I use Sublime Text every day. So I made it this week's tool.
Sublime Text, like we mentioned before, is awesome. It's got fantastic versions for Linux, Windows, and the Mac. It has Markdown support, which is great for me because all our stuff is in Markdown, and I run it through Sublime Text and tweak it before I post it. But it also has tons of other syntax support, and it's fast. It's not free, though.
No,
fair.
it's not. Although they have an interesting trial, right? There are free trials, unlimited. It just nags you.
Yeah. Hey, remember, you could buy this. Yeah, and it has great Python support, which
Yes, it does.
you know.
Which I'm sure will be popular.
Yeah.
And for everybody writing me letters in C, it does hook into GCC and LLVM.
SublimeText.com. I love that. It's good. Notepad++ is good. I'm not gonna. If you're on Windows, I'm not gonna lie. Notepad++ is good. I think
Sublime Text is better.
Sublime Text is better, and because you can run it on any desktop you want, that kind of gives it some. Because then you always feel like you're at home, regardless of where you're at.
Actually, did you know they have an Ubuntu PPA for Sublime Text?
That's awesome.
That's how I have it installed on the XPS.
That's awesome, sir. I like it when I can just get it from my from a repository, because then that means updates are a cinch. All right, you have a book pick this week, and it's an Audible pick.
Yes, I do.
Good man. I love Audible, and we have an affiliate, so I will link. So if you check this book out in the show notes, the link will be affiliated. What is that? What is it?
So it's called Turing's Cathedral. It's basically a book about the history of, the subtitle is The Origins of the Digital Universe. It's basically the history of computing rather than necessarily computers. I'll be honest, it's got Turing in the title. It takes them a long time to actually get to Alan Turing.
Okay.
But it's still very interesting.
Audio is a great way to consume this stuff, too, especially if you're a podcast listener. Here, I'll play a little sample.
Predictions of weapons effects. Numerical simulation of chain reactions within computers initiated a chain reaction among computers, with machines and codes proliferating as explosively as the phenomena they were designed to help us understand.
It seems like it's going to be one of those books that really makes you think about things in a different way. It's got pretty good reviews, too, across the board.
One of the interesting things is, we kind of think of computers as this free, kind of hippie-esque thing. Really, all the big advancements in basic computing were made because of wars.
Although some of the commenters are critiquing it in some ways, but
a lot of people didn't like. And it's a little weird. The title is Turing's Cathedral,
and it takes. The comments are saying it takes a little while to get to him.
Yeah, and it's less about him and more about the history of computing as a whole.
That'd be kind of interesting. A good way to honestly, sometimes these kinds of books are good to fall asleep to too. I'm not saying I do that, but the Audible app does have a sleep timer. So if you're having a hard time falling asleep, you put it on the sleep timer for like 30 minutes. I promise you won't have a problem falling asleep. Not because they're boring, but because you know how your mind can race. Well, if you give it something to focus on, like a nice steady narrative like these have, it really helps lull you to sleep.
I see. So if it was, Stallman's Cathedral, you'd probably not fall asleep, right? Because he'd be yelling at you.
You really got to pick the right book. Because if you pick something that is too gripping, you really get wrapped up in it, and it's very hard to fall asleep. But these kinds of things are the perfect kind of thing to space out to and fall asleep to. I know it sounds funny, but really, if you have trouble sleeping, that's my prescription. Give it a shot.
Chris,
give it a try.
Can I plug one last thing before we sign out here?
Dude, totally.
I would like to plug Brian Lunduke's open source development projects.
Aw. But he's not open sourcing them anymore.
Oh, he's not?
No.
I'm always late. I was late to contribute money, and now I'm late to plug them.
Well.
Whoops. So
he's going to have new versions of the closed-sourced ones, though, so maybe we can plug them when those come out.
Yeah, so, if you didn't contribute to the open source, go buy the closed source.
There you go.
I'm sorry to hear that. I really didn't know that.
Really?
I've been busy. I just figured, he's still doing that. He does some good work. Thank you, Cheesy Bacon. I do fail. Yes.
Yeah, he had to throw in the towel, unfortunately.
I was afraid of that. But
there you go. You can find. I think you can find basically the history of it on his Google Plus page. I think he was talking about a lot of it in discussion threads.
Did he come close to the goal or no?
I don't really know exactly what happened, to be honest.
I bet you it's Stallman's fault.
Maybe it might have been. Might have been a coordinated effort from Stallmanites. All right. Well, so you mentioned your blog a couple of times this episode, but you don't actually very often tell people what that is. So where can people find your blog, sir?
It's mdominic.com.
There you go. And Google Plus is another great place to get a hold of you, right?
Yes, it is.
Just search for Michael Dominic on there. But of course, really, folks, email the show if you want to get something to the show, coderradio@jupiterbroadcasting.com. You can also find me on Twitter. I am twitter.com/ChrisLAS. And Michael, anything else you want to cover before we get out of here?
That's it. Sorry for the air raid alarm.
No, I loved it. And thank you, everyone, for tuning to this week's episode of Coder Radio. Feel free to join us live Monday mornings at 9 a.m. Pacific over at jblive.tv. And then the show is available for download shortly after that over at jupiterbroadcasting.com. Thanks so much for tuning in this week's episode, everyone. See you right back here next week.